A Super Bowl happened last week, but our Super Bowl happens this Sunday. It's the Daytona 500. Daytona Speed Week's already coming to a close, and we're getting ready for the biggest race of the season. It's our first back road of the official regular season. Come with us down the back road. Coming at you right now.
It's a non-points race, but it is a short race. Checker flag. That's all this race is.
Two from the States.
All right, it is Friday, February 16th, 2024. Welcome down the back road, and we have done it, folks. We've made it through the NASCAR offseason, and we're in the fucking thick of Speed Week right now. It's here. It is in front of us. We've seen qualifying. We've seen the Bluegreen vacation duels on Thursday night as well. We've locked in most of our betting cards that we're going to share with you today. We're building our DFS lineups as we speak. And we're a little bit late here on the program this week because of the duels, so we apologize for the inconvenience there. My name is Seth Woolcock. I'm joined by my co-host, Rod Villagomez, a member of our military service and also the host of the #1 NASCAR gambling podcast called the NASCAR Gambling Podcast. Rod, really cracking down on that SEO search term over there, man. How are we doing today?
I did not know that was a thing, but I'm very much appreciative of the fact that it is. But hey, listen, it's good to be back here on the back road. It's good to be with you. It's good to meet Brian. We just talked about it just before we jumped on air. Brian and I have never actually met face to face. We've had several interactions, several conversations, but none where I'm actually looking at him as he talks to me. So it's good to see that as well. But hey, listen, Seth, it's just great to be talking NASCAR again on this station, on this channel, because I got to tell you, it means racing is right around the corner.
It does. It absolutely does. And as you alluded to, we are joined by a good friend of the program, a staple of the fantasy and gaming industry. You can find him at places like Fantasy Life, BetSperts. He's also the host of Angle of Pursuit podcast. Make sure you're checking them out. Brian Twining. Brian, how are we doing today, man? How are the vibes as we head into a great weekend of racing ahead?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, guys. I once again just want to thank you for having me on today. I had been looking forward to the beginning of this NASCAR season probably since we ended the previous one.
Yes.
I mean, working in like the football industry, I was tired of watching football every single day. I am ecstatic to get to our Super Bowl.
Yes.
Yeah, like you said, the betting cards are full, contrary to what we try to say we're going to do. But yeah, I'm just stoked to get into this Daytona 500.
Yeah, I feel like I come out off the Clash every single year. We have a lot of futures out. I've made a little bit of bankroll so far. I'm like, I'm going to protect that at Daytona. And then I see all these great offerings and it doesn't happen. I'm listening to great people like you over there and Rod and Cody over there and NASCAR betting preview show still here at In Between Media as well. So all this great information. What we're going to do today is we're going to take you through it. We're going to give a little bit of a Daytona 500 breakdown, look at some track comps, some data, some different trends we're looking at, the history of this race. Then we're going to get into DFS. We're going to rank these drivers and how we would play it in DFS. And then we'll break down our betting cards as well. So guys, we are absolutely loaded for the Great American Race. Want to thank the IBT family for hanging out with us today on Friday. If you guys are new to the channel, we're trying to break 1,000 subscribers before we hit Dover in the spring. We're going to do some type of fun giveaway if we get there. So let us know how we can best bring you guys more content. We got clips coming out. We still have the Fantasy Football podcast, the PGA podcast, and then, of course, here on the back road. But let's go ahead and jump into it, guys, here with Horizon Forecast.
Hey, Michael, it was only 20% chance of rain. I think we got all 20.
It's so hard to break down Daytona because it's like, do you really have to break down what is one of the most iconic speedways in the world? This is a big super speedway, 2.5 miles, but it is much narrower than a place like Talladega. When we're looking at some of the different data, and I think everything has to have a little bit of an asterisk with it this week, guys. Like, we have to say, this is one of those weeks whatever you're willing to put out there unit share wise, be willing to lose it because it could hit the fan. We saw that just on Thursday night. But looking at the tracks and the comps coming into this one, we're looking at Daytona 2023, both the 500 and the Coke Zero Sugar 400. Then where you can look at some primary comps like Talladega, Atlanta. Also, Rod, the one benefit of the 500 is we get other data like the qualifying from Wednesday and like the duels on Thursday as well.
Yeah, and really, honestly, you can almost take all of that and just throw it out as well because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, obviously, we watched some really good cars struggle in the duels, and now they're going to be starting toward the rear of the field. I mean, looking at you, Kyle Busch, looking at you, these guys that are going to be fighting their way back up through the field. And so what do? I mean, they have fast cars. Yeah, they have historically good track records at a track like Daytona or whatever, but, all it could take is for one of these guys to get sideways and collect him in a wreck. And then you're like, well, okay, that was fun. Glad I put that third of a unit on him to finish in the top 5. But that's going to go bye-bye. So, again, as we've always cautioned you with super speedway racing, comp tracks, everything, all that research is great and fine and well, and it'll get you far. But remember that it's all for naught if somebody gets turned sideways or somebody bumps into somebody just a little bit on the wrong end, and you're Ryan Blaney and you're calmly telling everybody that you're on fire as you're getting out of your car.
Brian, I think Rod makes a great point there that, hey, we can do all this research, but it could go all up in smoke. With that being said, what is like your unit allocation for a race like this? Are you willing to put 10% of your bankroll in, or are you going a little bit smaller than that?
Yeah, so that's funny you asked that because Kyle and I, we just recorded our first regular season show a couple of days ago over at Angle of Pursuit. And one of the things I mentioned was normally if you allocate 1/36 of your entire season's bankroll to each race, I was like, you should split that into a quarter and use that for each of the traditional super speedway races of both at Daytona and Talladega. And, part of me also wants to even go less here at the 500 because even though it is the same as racing in the Coke 400 during the summer, and we like to use Talladega as a comp track, the fact that it is a narrower track, there's so much more on the line. The winning the 500 is the most prestigious accomplishment a driver in the sport could do. So there's just so much more that is happening here that there is much more crazy stuff that does happen. So you got to be careful. You got to be willing to spend what you're trying to bet here. And that's kind of the way that I always attack the 500. It's the first race of the year. We're all excited. I try to do it for fun. And then, I kind of come in here expecting like I'm probably going to be looking at a red balance sheet after the race.
Yeah, we can do everything we can, but sometimes you're going to be in the red. Looks like we got DPat44 in the chat saying, yo, let's go. What's good? Good to see you, man. He's actually going to be playing in our fantasy NASCAR league this year with us. So excited to hang out with you and answer any questions we can for you, Pat. And we got Lena back in the chat. What's up, Lena? So good to see you. Yes, we are back full time now, so it's good to be back here. We had a couple preview episodes of the season, talked a little Busch Light Clash, but nothing is as good as Daytona here. Let's look at the schedule here. Final practice Saturday, 10:30 Eastern time in the morning, and then the race will be Sunday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. Nothing out of the sorts there. Stages for this race, 65, 65, and 70. So with so many laps, I don't think we're going to be taking anyone. Do you guys have anything like stage 1 winner or one of those bets like stage 1 winner to win the race, anything like that? Because that's not even my thought process this fucking week.
Not even close. There's no way I want to touch any of that because you and I both know that change could happen. That lead change could happen at the start finish line. So I'm not even baiting myself into that one.
Okay.
I don't have any stage bets either, just because so much can happen with guys maybe punting the end of stage 1 in order to set up for the, fuel saving for stage 2 in the finale of the race. So I'm staying away from that.
Okay, let's look at some trends here. These are courtesy of J-Ski. We have 7 active Daytona 500 winners in the field. Of course, Denny Hamlin, 3 of those. Your guy, Rod, Jimmy Jam with 2 of them. And then guys like Ricky Stenhouse, Austin Cindric, Michael McDowell, Austin Dillon, Logano, all with 1. It's interesting saying those names because all those guys have already kind of been in the mix of things here earlier this week in Speed Week, other than Austin Dillon. He's kind of been a little shabby, but, that's kind of what you get out of this RCR number 3 car. The oldest driver to win this race, Bobby Allison, he was 50 in 1988. And the youngest, Trevor Bayne, I can remember that one. Godfather's house. I was like 13, 14 years old, seeing him win that, 20 years old in 2011. Something about the starting position trend, which is absolutely wild here. The most recent winner from the poll in the Daytona 500, Dale Jarrett in 2000. However, the front row has still won this race nearly 25% of the time. Top 10 has won this race nearly 69% of the time. Haha, nice. So with that being said, do you kind of weigh that at all, Rod? Do you think, like, are you more invested in these guys higher up the board, or does that kind of go out the window for you, especially with 3 of the last 4 races being guys who've started outside the top 15?
So it's tough because when you look at the guys that are at the front, those are the guys that you expect to be at the front, right? You talk about the Loganos of these, right? And all these guys that are at the front, but you and I both know too, and especially with Hamlin, he'll pull himself out and dip to the back and wait things out and kind of feel the race, right? These guys know how to do that. And a lot of them benefit from being able to jump back up into the fray when they need to, but then sometimes that backfires. And so you could be at the front and you could pull yourself out and just pull yourself to the back of the pack. And then all of a sudden, like I said, car turns sideways and you're up in it, and your strategy to kind of sit and wait just cost you the race. So it is tough, but the fact that Joey Logano is on the pole and it's an even year Joey Logano, I almost want to roll with that just out of sheer storyline. I know Brian's not digging the even year Joey Logano, but you know, I know it hasn't happened in 24 years, but it happened and it could happen again, right? I don't know.
Brian, I have to ask you, what do you think about the manufacturers this week? We know Ford has won 3 straight coming into this. It's been a big headline. We have the new Dark Horse Mustang, which has been a little up and down this week. They looked great on Wednesday in qualifying, not so great in the duels yesterday. How do you feel about the manufacturers? Do you see an edge for someone like Chevy, who is running pretty much the same body, but they still have to learn how to draft off these Fords and these Toyotas?
Yeah, I definitely think that's going to play a crucial part of this race on Sunday, or probably actually Monday. But you know, like Toyotas, for me, one of the things that really stood out to me was how well they were able to move through the field in the draft. Like, this was something that they've had issues with since the next gen car, and clearly they might be the strongest manufacturer when it comes to setting up and creating the train-like feature. And especially when they have 8 or 9 cars now, instead of just the 6 that we've been running the last couple of years, they can get a lot more momentum than we've seen from them before. The Fords, you know, Duel 1, there wasn't very many of them. And then Duel 2, it was just, the whole mixture of drivers was mixed up. I'm not taking too much away from them. I think they'll be fine because you have some of the best super speedway drivers in that camp: Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Austin Cindric. I mean, Michael McDowell. Like, they have great super speedway guys. And then the Chevys, I just don't know what to think about them in terms of winning the race, because they've been great at qualifying, but when it comes to finding the checkered flags, they haven't been as successful with the bigger names winning these. I mean, I know Stenhouse won last year, but we're talking about Chase Elliott's, Kyle Larson's, Alex Bowman, William Byron's. Like, they haven't been there at the end. So I really think the Toyotas have found that next level, and they're the manufacturer to look out for as we go into the race.
Love it. We got Alan in the chat. What's up, Alan? Good to see you, man. Happy Daytona 500 week to you as well. Last thing I want to touch on here before we jump into the actual DFS notes is Asterisks Driver of the Week. That's presented by our sponsor, iFantasyRace.com. Shout out to Ryan, all the great work they're doing over there. This is how we continue to be profitable in NASCAR gambling, is because of sites like iFantasyRace.com. So make sure you're checking them out. In Ryan's Asterisks report that is actually free to read over there this week, Kyle Larson was a top 10 contender in the 500 a season ago. Late in that race, he crashed, which led to an 18th place finish. He was 11th in average running position, led 6 laps on the day, and was running second on that final restart for overtime before getting collected in another big one. So, Rod, I know you hate Kyle Larson, and he loved, though, for him this week, hearing what we're hearing from our guys over at iFantasy Race. Plus, the dude can fucking push. We saw that yesterday.
Look, I don't hate Kyle Larson. I love Kyle. He's from Elk Grove. He's from my own backyard. Like, I love the guy. But the main commandment that we've lived by on the NASCAR Gambling Podcast and our buddy Cody Zeeb could pretty much make a shirt. always fade Kyle Larson. That asterisk could be by his entire Daytona career. Like that is everything that is bad has happened to him. It's happened to him at Daytona. It's pretty much happened to him at the 500. He could be leading every single lap from the green flag until lap 199. But that 200th lap, something's going to happen to him. And so, you can bait yourself every single year into saying this is going to be Kyle Larson's year. You're going to be heartbroken every single year, but you can still do it if you like the pain. If you love living in pain, continue to back Kyle Larson on this track.
And it's crazy because in the duel last night, I was backing him. I love Kyle Larson in kind of these like one-off events. I loved him in the All-Star race last year. He won us a lot of money there. I liked him in the Clash a couple of weeks ago. And Kyle Larson kind of looked like his race to lose after Truex ends up getting off schedule there on a pit stop here. And it leaves Kyle Larson out there battling for the win. Chase eventually leaves him here, Brian. Bowman gets in the back of him in the tri-oval, gets Larson out of the groove. Reddick comes out of fucking nowhere to win. Were you on Reddick, Brian? What were your thoughts on that first duel? Because I was like, yeah, NASCAR's back. This is Daytona, baby.
Yeah, it's really interesting watching Kyle Larson's lack of success in terms of finishing at these races. And I think a lot has to do with the fact that he's admittedly very aggressive and sometimes too aggressive when he's not supposed to be. And I think that's where a lot of the other like really successful super speedway drivers separate themselves from him because they know when to make the move. They know when to push. They know when to back off. As far as Tyler Reddick goes, like, look, I know that there was value out there on him. There's a few people talking about like his odds were great value betting that, especially in the small field, but Reddick just hadn't shown anything in terms of finishing positions at Daytona himself to warrant me trying to get on him. I did like Toyotas though. Like I had Christopher Bell in Duel 2. So,
congrats. Nice.
Yeah. The Toyotas, again, I'm going to keep repeating this all weekend. Like I think they are the manufacturer to beat this weekend. I think it's really important too to note like another guy that I think should be on this asterisk mark is actually William Byron, who his best finish at the Daytona 500 is 21st since 2019. So we're talking about the guy who led the Cup Series and wins last year, who's runs good here, but he just can't finish well at this track.
It's crazy too. Like there was a lot of fucking victory laps going around the internet last night with people who were on Tyler Reddick. And I was like, man, this guy kind of drove like dog shit. He almost put it into the wall earlier and then came out of absolutely nowhere. So, Rod, I hope I'm not, you weren't the one victory lapping out there on Tyler Reddick. People can do what they want on their Twitter accounts. But Christopher Bell kind of stole the show in the second duel, Rod. And Austin Cindric kind of comes out of nowhere, cuts off Harrison Burton, who was trying to go for the win. As usual, carnage happens in that second duel, though. Rowdy, Blaney, Noah Gragson, Riley Herbst, all tied up in it. Why is it always the second duel, Rod, that like shit hits the fan every single year?
I think it's because when you watch the first one go, you're itching to get out there, right? And you want to make those moves and you're seeing what's happening in that first race and you evaluate that first race, right? And so you're like, oh man, well, if I'm in this situation, this is what I'm going to do. Whereas you're in the first race, you're setting the tone. You're just out there riding around, getting a feel for it. You're just sort of out there logging laps because you haven't logged any in a long time. And then, when you're a race car driver and you're sitting there watching other people on the track, I'm sure you're anxious and you're ready to get out there and be like, all right, I gotta hammer down now. And then the fact that it's the last race brings the finality of it together, right? Where this is it.
Yes.
Like I have to accomplish this now. Right. Whereas the first guys are like, okay, well, we're first, we're out here. But then I don't know what it is about mentally knowing that you're it, that you've got to make this going, that maybe that's it. I don't know. I'm not a race car driver, but that's my best guess.
I love it. All right, guys, let's go ahead. Let's transition to the DFS side of things and break this down a little bit further here in tire tiers. All right. Oh, sorry about that, Brian. I lost you there. Give me 1 second as I pull up Brian here. Sorry, I screwed up my layouts there, Rod. As I'm doing that, talk about these drivers who we didn't see make the race, because it was pretty awesome to kind of see that all shake out here. BJ McLeod got a little bit of airtime as well. You got to love our guy, BJ.
Yeah, you feel for a guy like BJ, though, because honestly, that was the most heartbreaking thing. That dude was in it. I mean, he was in it, and he was running well. He was running up front. no sponsor on the car. He might as well have
Yeah.
just had the big ME, right? Because he was racing for me and whatever mountain lion on his hood. But yeah, I feel for the guy. I mean, he put up a good showing, and I really do hope that somebody steps in. Brian, I think it was you, right, that said, "Can we pool our money and put something on the hood for him?" Because
Yeah.
I'd do it, man. I'd sponsor that guy.
Yeah, and then there's JJ Yaley as well, Brian, who does not qualify for this race. And the 44, kind of interesting in conversation this week on the internet as well. Greg Biffle rumored to be in that car. He's thrown out some allegations that apparently he wasn't paid for a couple of these races. So a lot of allegations flying out there with the 44, the 78. We love Live Fast. They don't qualify here. What do you think of other drivers who did qualify their way in here? Kaz Gralla in the 36, David Reagan in that number 60 car for RFK, Anthony Alfredo and Beard Motorsports, those money laundering sons of bitches. They did it. They got in the race in the 62, and then Jimmy Jam in that 84. Any guys like that you want to throw on the board here that you think could be contenders for DFS or betting purposes?
Well, let me just start off by saying I am extremely happy that fellow Italiano Anthony Alfredo made it into the field here. And let me
Yes.
also point out, like Beard Motorsports, they have a top 10 on the books a couple of years ago with Noah Gragson driving there. So I mean, they're not exactly a shit show over there when it comes to Daytona 500 racing. Now, I think obviously Jimmy Johnson is the big story, and I mean, quite honestly, it's a lot nicer to see him make it in than it is to see a team that's going to run maybe 3 races total throughout the entire year. But I think my favorite, like, non-guaranteed spot driver that got in has got to be David Reagan. I mean, we're talking about a guy with multiple top 10 runs, and he was at Rick Ware Racing. Now he's driving a third RFK car that gives an added boost to both Chris Buescher and Brad Keselowski, who are fantastic at this track and could have won here last year. And I think Reagan, you know, if you're looking to throw darts at, you know, top 20 or top 10 bets, he's somebody to consider if the number is correct. And, you know, you obviously go into this realizing like there's probably an even amount of chance that he doesn't even finish on the lead lap or even finish the race than there is him getting that placement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Rod, I want to go to you first, man. Let's start off this board. Are you taking some of the chalk at the top of it with Denny Hamlin, Blaney, Rowdy, Larson? Do you want any of those guys? Or are you looking a little deeper here for your driver A, the 101 of the season?
You know, it's tough because you've got guys that are up here in the high prices like Blaney, like Busch, like Larson. They're going to be starting deep in the pack. And at their price, it's going to take a lot to return on that value, but they're going to do it, right? So it's a matter of whether or not you really feel comfortable putting a guy like Blaney at 9,800 in your lineup. So I'm going to I guess I'll start at the top with Denny Hamlin. He's an even 10,000, right? He's starting 8th. And I've said it before, and I said it Denny Hamlin knows how to pull himself out of trouble. Denny Hamlin's been a guy that's consistently been able to finish these races. Granted, they're not all the greatest finishes in the world for Denny Hamlin, but we talked about Toyota being very strong. Bubba Wallace has the best average finish at Daytona since 2021, right? He's finished 10.0. Granted, now Denny Hamlin's not anywhere on this list at all, but again, if 2311 is going to take a step up, if Gibbs is actually winning dual races,
right,
Toyota is going to be a big step up. So give me Denny at 10,000 for that tier A driver.
Okay. Brian, who else do you like for a driver A with our DraftKings and Fantrax lineups this week?
I mean, it's super easy going chalky here, but the number 12 car, regardless of whether or not he has to go to a backup, I mean, you're talking about a guy that he won the last super speedway event we had at Talladega. He's always up there at the front. And I still think to this day, he should have won the 2022 Daytona 500 if he was just a little bit meaner than the rest of his Penske teammates.
Yeah.
So yeah, Blaney for me, starting near the back, I think you're going to get a lot of benefit there with him moving up through the field, very similarly to where we saw like Kyle Busch do last year. So yeah, Blaney for me is an easy spot here in the A group.
Okay. I'll go ahead. I'll throw a couple up there. The first one is going to be who actually kind of comes in at value for me, Joey Logano at 9,200 over there on DraftKings. Obviously, the differential points are going to kind of play into this a little bit. He could be moving backwards throughout the race, so that could lose you some points. But I have all the confidence in the world in Joey Logano. When you look at iFantasy Racing's driver ratings across all super speedways last season, Logano's second. Logano knows how to get it done here. He has the fastest car, I believe, as well. So I'm thinking Logano is going to pull one out here and break that streak of Dale Jarrett's there. Also, I think, do the RFK boys both belong in this top tier just based on what they did last season, Rod? Do you think you can make a case for them? They were 4th and 5th in those driver ratings across super speedways, and it just seemed like race after race, whether it was Daytona or Talladega, these boys were fast and they were in this race from the get-go.
The book seemed to love Keselowski. They're giving him all the love in the world. And listen, if you buy into narratives, Buescher's flying home for the birth of his kid, which gives you the baby bump, right? So yeah, might as well put them in the A tier because, you know, narrative speaking to the baby bump for Buescher. We'll give him that one.
Brian, I think they're both good bets here with being kind of in those teens of the starting position. So they do have some differential bonus available to them. Is there anyone else you would consider for a driver A?
Look, sticking with the Toyota camp and probably my favorite driver in the sport, unashamedly, I announce this all the time, but that's got to be Bubba Wallace. Look, he like Rod said, he has the best average finish at Daytona for anybody that has run, I believe it's like 8 or more of the last 10 Daytona events. This dude is always there at the end. He seems to be running at the end in every single one of these races. I know last year he didn't really show the speed like in the playoffs at Talladega, blah, 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 but they were playing that safe. So I love Bubba here. If it wasn't for a couple of wrecks for him, you're talking about a guy that probably has consecutive top 5, top 3 finishes in the 500.
Okay, I like that. Rod, anyone else you can make the case for in the A tier?
I mean, I'm teetering on Christopher Bell only because of what we saw.
Yes.
So do you want to put him in A or do you want to put him in B?
I think he belongs in A. Yeah. And I'm usually the guy on Christopher Bell who's a little bit more abrasive, but I mean, when you look at what Bell did, he was brilliant at some of these super speedways, especially in the spring and the winter time. Kind of fell off down the stretch there at some of the super speedways later in the season, but still 10th on the driver ratings across all super speedways last season. And at 8,300, yes, he's starting 4th. Yes, he could move backwards. I still think you're getting a hell of a discount, 8,300. Like, I'd rather play him than someone I think like Truex in that range. So I'm there with it. Who would you start out the B tier with, Rod?
Ugh, that's a tough one. Already it's getting tough.
I know.
I guess Kyle Busch in that B tier. He is starting 34th, which means he's going to be, you know, rolling up through the field, and he's a guy that can do it. So I'm just hoping that 9,700 price tag is not too much to pay for a disappointing day out of Kyle Busch if he does end up getting caught in something early. Tends to not be early in the trouble category, so maybe he can outlast and sort of pull up with more of his Chevy buddies and stay out of trouble. So yeah, give me Kyle Busch reluctantly to start B.
All right, Rowdy. I think that'll be a chalky play. That's my only feeling just because he is starting so deep. I think a lot of people will pay that premium for him. Brian, who else do you think belongs here in our B tier?
Well, this is another easy selection for me, but I'm going with the RCR teammate, Austin Dillon, former Daytona 500 champ. The starting position of 33rd and just a $7,300 cost over at DraftKings, to me, are more than worthy of putting him up at this spot. You're talking about a guy that excels at super speedways. It's his best track in the Cup Series. And we saw what they were doing last year, these RCR cars right there with the RFK guys. So I think that both of them are very deserved of this B group.
Okay. All right. I don't know if I would have gone that far with it, Brian, but I like the confidence, my friend. We got, I think this might be Cody from over at the NASCAR Gambling Podcast saying,
It's not me.
Gonna win this week. Oh, all right. All right. Wow. We're getting dicey already here, boys. If we're getting controversial, I'm going to do it. Give me fucking Kyle Larson. This guy was the best pusher in
Raj,
these
check
doors.
it out.
Yeah. Yeah. See you, Rod. We'll see you next time on the program. Listen, I know he's probably going to get fucking snake bit in the end, but I think if there's a guy who can remain, I don't know if he can lead a shit ton in this race, but I think he can be out in that front row, in that second row, pushing a lot of the day. This guy's got to get it going here, man. Like, this is his time. So give me some Kyle Larson. And the one thing I love about him this week, Brian, leverage, the word leverage. Everyone's like Rod. Nobody wants to pay Kyle Larson, especially at 9,500. I think I'm going to be that son of a bitch and do it. In like a season long, like a fan tracks league, I'm going to save Larson because I think he's more valuable at other tracks. But in DraftKings, in a daily league, give me the number 5 car.
Yeah, I don't hate that. Look, I've been kind of speaking to the fact that I was hoping that Kyle Larson punts these first two races, so that way we get some kind of discount in
Yes.
Las Vegas, like even a half of half of a unit type of number here. Instead of 5, we get 5.5 to 1
Right.
for Las Vegas. But yeah, no, I think Larson's lack of finishing success definitely glosses over the fact that he's been good and been there throughout the majority of the races. It's just his luck at the end just hasn't been good.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anyone's luck that could be a little bit better here and that you feel a little more confident in the B tier?
Well, for me, listen, I kind of want to toss in these Legacy Motor Club gentlemen.
Oh,
Eric
Love
Jones
it.
been fantastic, and then Jimmy Johnson. That dude, if he did not hit into a tough patch there in that first duel, we could have been looking at Jimmy Johnson charging down for at least a top 3 finish in that one instead of battling JJ Yaley for the last spot. And listen, I may be a Jimmy Johnson homer, but I guarantee you right now that he proved that he is in it to win it this week. And I mean, listen, I love those Legacy Motor Club boys right now.
he's got fucking Creed on the car. That's all you need to know this week, folks. He's got fucking Creed on the car. You'll be all right with Jimmy. He'll be chalky, I think, in some of these season-long leagues as well, like fan tracks where we don't see Jimmy a lot. So just be aware of that. But what about John Hunter? Where do you think he belongs? Brian, can you make the case that he belongs in this B tier? I mean, he qualified, I think, almost better than any of these guys. John Hunter's going to be starting near the front in 10th, at least, in the top 5 of the grid.
Yeah, the only thing I worry about with JHN is the fact that the last time we saw him in the Cup Series, he was basically like Ricky Stenhouse playing bumper cars with people. And, he didn't make a lot of friends during his last full-time season in the Cup Series. Yeah, he's with the Toyotas now. Starting 10th, I worry about the place differential with him, regardless of the salary savings he gets. So I wouldn't quite put him in the B group. Now,
we'll throw him in the C's maybe.
Yeah. There are 2 guys that I do think teeter in between B and C.
Okay.
The aforementioned 2022 Daytona 500 winner, Austin Cindric. Listen, we got the top 2 Penske guys already in A. Like, there is a reason why that garage is so good here. And Cindric is one of the better super speedway guys. And then somebody who's kind of going a little overlooked, I think, this week, who was really talked about during the duels, that's Chase Elliott. He doesn't have the best finishes at Daytona, but I mean, he's averaging like running around 8th or 9th place, and he's fresh off of a season that was probably his worst probably ever in racing. What better way to get the year started off, leaving last year behind him, than performing really well at the 500?
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, he looked good yesterday too. I was really debating putting at least something on him going into that duel, and I was like, God damn it, is Chase Elliott really going to fuck me over in the end? And luckily he did not. I hope Austin Cindric enjoys being in the B's this week, thanks to Brian, because he's not going to get there anywhere close the rest of the year. But kid had speed. I hope he doesn't get in front of Harrison Burton, because Burton might have a bone to pick with him after what happened in the duel there. All right. I got to throw out a couple here. My first would be Ross Chastain. Ross, like, I know people say like this guy's wild and he's a wild card. Yes, he is. But I think in the same time, we have to remember, like, how did he win his Talladega race that he won years ago? He didn't move. He stayed still when everyone else was getting crazy around him. I think Ross has the speed. He led 19 laps, which was the second most in the Coke Zero Sugar 400 back in the fall. So I like Ross a little bit here as a leverage play. I don't think he's going to be the most chalkiest guy. And at the price of $8,100, I'm willing to pay it. I'd also like to maybe mention a guy, and it's going to depend how your league does the differential points. But fucking Carson Hocevar, holy shit, guys. Is this kid a fucking rocket? I could not believe what we saw out of Carson Hocevar, willing to mix it up and looked like a damn good car here. We've seen Spire have some success here at these types of tracks, Rod. Any love for a guy like Carson Hocevar or Corey LaJoie, any of these off-brand teams, if you would?
Well, I'm contractually obliged to throw the 7 up there next to the 77 because 777, and not just because of that, but because if I did not, then Cody would not let me back into the studio after we finish here. So, yeah, I mean, listen, Hocevar proved last season even that he was good enough to be up here in the Cup Series as well. And run with the big boys. He's proven it in every series. His my contract's been extended. Thank God, Cody. No, but listen, he's proved it at every level that he's been at. So I think he's gonna do it again in good equipment. And we got Corey LaJoie, who Cody will tell you is one of the better super speedway racers on God's green earth. So yeah, I think the two of them are gonna mow through some positions and actually come away with a good finish.
Okay. Brian, anyone else here that you can make the case for in the C tier?
This is going to be extremely gross, and I'm probably going to get lambasted on socials here, but we're adding both the 15 and the 51 Rick Ware racing cars, Justin Haley and Riley Herbst. Both of these guys are incredible at super speedways. Riley Herbst proved it last year at the 500, and I believe he ran one of the Talladega races where he did pretty well there. And then Justin Haley, like his only win in the Cup Series is at Daytona. And he's also been somebody that's been very successful at these types of higher speed tracks. So I have a few more tidbits on Rick Ware Racing in particular, which also leads me to put these guys here as we get back into our betting cards a little bit later.
Okay, I like it. I like it a lot. Where does Byron and Reddick sit here for you? Because Byron, I think you can make the case for 8,700. He hasn't finished well, as we kind of alluded to earlier in Daytona 500s, but he did have a fast car last night. He did have the issue where he couldn't see out of his back mirror, which is obviously a fucking problem here at a drafting track. So I would put Byron here, but I think I could almost make, despite winning the Duels, Rod, I think I could make the argument that I think Tyler Reddick belongs in the Ds just based on what he's done at Daytona in the past. And he's starting third, which is really, really hard to swallow considering we think he's going to move back despite the price of 7,800.
What's funny is that we've got his teammate up there in the A's and he's all the way down in the D. I mean, I know that Tyler Reddick is going to have a fantastic season, and maybe it starts this week too with all the Toyota love that we've got going on, but boy, I tell you. And then third, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of guys like I said, Denny Hamlin starting in the top part of the field doesn't scare me nearly as much as Tyler Reddick starting in the top part of the field. So yeah, I would fear losing points out of Reddick more than I would out of Denny Hamlin. So I feel bad putting him in the D category, but I kind of feel like that's where he belongs this week.
Yeah, after qualifying, especially. What do you think here, Brian? Who else belongs on this board? We still have some big names like Truex, like Alex Bowman, guys who have done well in the 500, but just can't seem to win it.
So I think it'd be a mistake for us not to put Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the C group. I mean, when you're talking about C, you're talking about average, and the guy just won the 500 last year, albeit when everybody stopped betting him to do so. But, you know, he finally got it done. And then I also think AJ Allmendinger, now without the pressures of running full-time in the Cup Series, I do think you're going to see him get maybe a little bit more aggressive because he has nothing to lose, literally, here, you know, racing in the 500. And then, you know, when you look at the D group, you're splitting hairs with these guys. I know Alex Bowman, he's been okay, but he's never really shown winning race speed. So yeah, I like him in the Ds. And then somebody for me that Ryan Preece, he's always been somebody that I've been attracted to at super speedways, but he's another one that just always seems to get stuck in traffic, be part of the big ones. I mean, we saw what happened last year when he literally became the devil with his eyes becoming bloodshot. So yeah, and then you're just kind of throwing darts at the rest of the drivers, in my opinion.
Yeah, I will say I do like Daniel Suarez a little bit. We haven't touched on him. After Ross took that speeding penalty in that duel last night, Daniel Suarez was out there logging laps late into that race, trading back and forth with Kyle Larson. Daniel Suarez has been a threat towards the end of these races. I don't know if he can get the finish. He did last year in the top 10. I like him maybe this week too. And also, like, can we give some fucking love for Zane Smith? Nobody likes this guy. Guy who's won two straight truck races here. I like Zane Smith a little bit. He was mixing it up last week. He's going to start in those mid-teens. So I think Zane Smith belongs on this board. Rod, any final drivers before we run through that you want to touch on?
I'm looking at the board and I can't. I mean, unless you want to put Truex up there because of the Toyota in the Ds to not completely diss him on the super speedway. So yeah, that's about as far as I can go without wanting to put all these in the F.
I will
Yeah.
say, I think David Reagan belongs in the D's.
Oh, there you go. That's a good one. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we'll just kind of make note of the rest of these guys then. Noah Gragson, he looked fast running with the Las Vegas boys on the outside last night. Kind of does what Noah Gragson does. Got a little wily, ended up in the wall. Josh Berry had some type of electrical issue. This was crazy. I had Josh Berry versus Riley Herbst sweating that out last night in a matchup. Riley gets out in that crash and said, oh my gosh, it's just cash. And then right after that, literally a lap later, Josh Berry, some technical issue, goes down with the car. So thank you, Josh Berry, for at least beating Herbst. Harrison Burton, we'll touch on him in the betting, but he's another guy. He's wily when he gets out in the front. I think he can get to the front. He showed some speed last night. So I like Harrison Burton. I mean, I'm putting Daniel Hemrick as far back as I can. This was a mistake bringing him to Cup. I'm sorry. Oh, we didn't touch on Michael McDowell. Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
Wow. Okay. This was,
I think he's a B. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, go ahead, toss him in there.
Okay. Yeah, we'll throw him at the end of the Bs. I think he belongs there. He could have some backwards differential points coming to affect him, but overall, Michael McDowell's looked stellar this week in Speed Week. The 36 car, man. What do we
I love Casgarala, but
Casgarala, no.
Yeah, what do we even say about the 36 car? And 38, Todd Gilliland's had some success on super speedways. If you wanted to like bet him for a top 20, you could. Ty Gibbs, any love for a D, Brian, or still an F for you as well?
He'd probably still be an F. I don't know. Just he's so aggressive and he's made a lot of enemies already. I mean, he has the enemy possible coming into the Daytona 500, and Joey Logano, who is the ultimate I don't give an F driver. So
yeah. Chase Briscoe, we can throw him ahead of Ty Gibbs. Like Briscoe has been solid at times at super speedways, but doesn't really get the finishes he usually deserves. Going to be starting 20th. So at 7,100, I think you can do a little bit worse. And then here we are, the Beard Motorsports number 62, manned by, none other than probably just a classy driver, I would say. I think that's how you could describe this guy, a classy driver. However, I don't think he's going to be a factor this week at all. Congrats on him to making it in the race here, but I don't think we have any interest in playing Anthony Alfredo in that number 62. So, all right. Well, that does it for DFS here this week, guys. I'm definitely lowering my bankroll a little bit in DFS. I usually get fucking steamrolled here at the end of these. But let's go ahead. Let's transition into our betting cards and round out the show with Parking Garage props. All right, I want to start out Parking Garage props how we always do, criticizing or perhaps praising this week the books. Rod, you've been following these lines closer than anyone since we've had a sniff of them back in the late 2023 year. How do you feel like the books did this week as far as variety, offerings, and just odds in general?
So, I mean, obviously early on, it was just outright. So it was good. But, we've seen some movement for sure in these odds. And I think the books have done a good job of keeping up with it. I think they actually gave us some pretty decent prices. I don't think they tried to price anybody out, especially on super speedways, because we've seen, sometimes they overreact and give you lines that just aren't worth betting on. But I think they've actually enticed enough people to go on it. And as far as options are concerned, I still love the menu that we get, especially on books like Caesars, where we get a ton of great props, but I'm greedy. I want more. F1 gets a ton more. Give me more. Give me fastest pit stop. Give me, qualifying. Give me those types of things that just make you want to watch every aspect of the race. So love your books. Love what you give us, but I'm sorry. I want more.
Brian, and I know probably your offerings are quite a bit different from me, living on pretty much the complete opposite side of the country here. But with that being said, what were your impressions of the books? I really liked that they had some different new markets out there. We saw top 20s come back. That was cool. Drivers to lead a lap. So some different kind of gimmicky ones here, but lower payouts, but still intriguing nonetheless.
Yeah, no, kind of echoing what Rod said, like I think they're making headways in terms of the markets that they are offering, but
Yeah.
in order to draw in like novice fans and to, get a larger rake on these races, they need stuff that's going to keep people interested early on. I mean, we're talking like, when does the first caution come out? I want to see driver matchups of laps completed. You could take the
Ooh,
back
okay.
markers and have like who's going to complete more laps. Minus 1.5 for Ricky Stenhouse versus so and so. Just interesting stuff like that. One thing that I haven't really seen offered is will the race go to overtime? I can't find that at the moment because I bet that last year and that was a yes bet for sure, and the 500 should be a yes bet every time. But yeah, like I like the offerings. I just like Rod, I wish it was more.
Yeah, I actually did see the overtime bet from our friends over at Bet Rivers out there in Pittsburgh, so we appreciate them.
Caesars has it too, by the way. I
Juice,
just
Oh, they do.
juice
minus
is hell, right?
160, yeah, minus 160 to the yes.
Yeah. So juice is hell there.
We got plus money last year on that.
I know. It's crazy when you look at the trends for that. Let's get into the outright market, Rod. Who is someone you are targeting in the outright market? Obviously, this could have been something you were in on the beginning of the week. Maybe that line shifted since then, but who are you interested in taking the outright here, despite everything we know that could go wrong and happen in this race?
I'm a little pissed off because earlier in the week before everything, I was on Logano and I was on Bell, and now they're both starting way toward the top. And I'm like, well, now I don't know if I want to be on them anymore because they're starting at the front, and that traditionally isn't it. But I mean, again, I was on Logano and Bell. We've seen what they were able to do during qualifying, during the duels, right? I mean, it wasn't unwarranted to be on them. And so I guess I could still be on them, even though their price is not necessarily. So when I was on them, Logano was at 14-1.
Yep.
Bell was at 22-1. Now Logano's at 10-1. Bell's at 13-1. So I would still stay on those guys, but I was also on Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson is at 65-1. Again, I'm a bleeding homer.
You're a sick fuck, man.
The dude has 2 trophies already. He's like, I don't know. I love him to death, but as a long shot, right? Anything can happen.
Yeah.
Jimmy, it's 65-1 still.
I can't get that sick with you, but I can get on Joey Logano. I was right there with you when you said his name on Monday on your show, 14-1. I went, and actually DraftKings was offering a boost that day, 50% boost. So I am at 21-1 right now. I wish I would have put that on qualifying so I could have already cashed this. But I really like what Logano did last year on these super speedways. Second in the 500 last year, won Atlanta, our comp track. And then this guy spent almost 70% of the laps inside the top 15. And yes, I know sometimes dropping back is a safe place to be, but if you can be out front logging laps, leading laps, I think you can also be safe there. Also has the 3rd best driver rating at this track in 2023, only behind those RFK boys. So I think Logano is going to bounce back here. And I really like what we could see from him down the stretch. So I'm with you there on Logano. Brian, is there anyone we haven't touched on that you have an outright for?
So let me just first say Joey Logano's win total this year, 1.5. I bet the over, and it's my largest exposure bet. So I don't hate Logano this year. I would just prefer he not win this weekend because I'm on Christopher Bell, 16-1 or 17-1 over at BetMGM right now. I mean, he's led laps in 2 of the last 3 Daytona 500s. He's been there at the end, competing for top 5, potentially a win. He finally won a duel after finishing twice before that. And again, going back to how good the Toyotas looked and the fact that he has possibly the best Daytona 500 driver in his camp in Denny Hamlin, which could help propel him to a victory here.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I'm honestly looking out there, and because I feel a little FOMO that I don't have Christopher Bell. So I'm looking out there right now if I can get him a number I like. The only one we haven't touched on for me is Michael McDowell. I have him at 30-1. I took this. This was kind of one of those that got released after the qualifying. I think I caught I caught our friends Bet Rivers sleeping a little bit to get him 30-1. I just put 0.3 of a unit on it, nothing crazy. And someone I kind of wish I would have got down earlier in the week because I saw him a lot of places 35, 40-1. I said, oh man, that seems like a misprice. And then goes out, qualifies as well as he does. So I like McDowell there. Rod, anything else for you in the outright, or do we pretty much touch on everything you're down on?
Look, I already exhausted my Jimmy Johnson
Yeah.
bullet out there, so I don't think I can go any lower than that.
Okay. Let's get into some placement props. Rod, do you have anything under like a top 3 or a top 5? It's hard for me to bet a lot of those sometimes. A lot of times I'll put something small to hedge my outright with. Did you do anything like that?
No, I mean, listen, so for top 5s and top 10s and top 3s, you're just kind of rolling the dice and looking for the better ones out of that. I was on early a Joey Logano top 3 at plus 400, which is kind of what I like the most out of that. But I mean, look, if we're going to go, there's actually boosts right now on Caesars where they're giving you some pretty decent top 5s now. Ooh. Where Brad Keselowski is at a plus 200 for a top 5 finish.
Okay.
You were talking about your love for the RFK boys out there. We got Chastain as a top 3 finisher at plus 850. So if you want to jump in on that, that's another one that I think could possibly, again, it's Chastain. You guys are both high on Chastain. So take it or leave it with that one. So those are 2 of the ones that I think if you're going to take the boosts, take the extra points and roll with them. I know they're a little longer shot, but you're getting better odds for it.
Keep in mind, I haven't seen it yet, but I imagine some of these sports books are going to drop a Daytona 500 promotion on Sunday, you would think, to just entice some of these casual bettors, but maybe that's not the case. I've been kind of looking for it all week. I mean, we get all these different promotions every single week. Brian, you're shaking your head like you're not expecting to see it.
Yeah, no, I just don't think that they're going to drop it the day of the race. Although I will say, I mean, you and I both know, like when we work in like the SEO stuff, for the Daytona 500 in particular, the largest or the biggest like search parameters for this race is Saturday and Sunday. So, although that would be the best time to do it, I highly doubt they're going to scramble together some promotion here other than whatever odds boosts they already have going.
All right. I'll take your word for it there. Stan asking in the chat, what's up, Stan? Good to see you today, man. Is anyone interested in Jones' top Toyota at 9-1? He was the fastest Toyota in qualifying. He's a decent driver. Yeah, man, I don't mind Jones, but it's really hard for me to get down on this personally, Brian, when we have guys like Denny Hamlin. We're super high on Christopher Bell. Bubba's always a contender. It just feels like it's really tough to back Eric Jones despite a great number there.
Yeah, for me, I like the number. If this was a different type of race and it was like a similar situation where he looks so good in practice and qualifying, I would not hate that. But I would just much rather go up and get him at 25 or 30-1 to win the race, as opposed to taking him 9-1, especially with how optimistic I am and a lot of other people on socials are about Toyotas this weekend.
Yeah, it's crazy too, because I've been tracking the over-under Toyota's 1.5 to finish inside the top 10 line. That has since shrunk into minus money. And I was thinking about getting down on that earlier in the week when it was plus money, but not a lot of Toyotas usually finish this race inside the top 10, usually get 1 or 2 as well. So like you probably are.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think maybe the books are forgetting the fact that they've increased their share of the field by 25%. They went from 6 cars to, I believe it's 9 cars this year. I mean, so you have a much larger chance of that happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say this, Stan, if you do want to get invested in Jones, I think I would prefer this than like a top 10 number on him, because I think if he's in the top 10, there's a good chance he's cashing this top Toyota. Any thoughts on Eric Jones here, Rod, for our guy Stan?
Well, you got to figure too that they're the new guys, they're the new Toyotas on the block. So if they're pushing at the end and you're not going to get Denny Hamlin that's going to want to jump out and help out, and Eric Jones is going to want to win that race himself. Right. So I love it for sure. But it's a tough one to get behind. There's a lot of good Toyotas out there. And I know I love my Legacy Motor Club, and anything, it's Jimmy Johnson that would be a top Toyota than Eric Jones.
Maybe more of a DFS play this week, Stan. But if you do want to go on that, just, small unit allocation for sure. Brian, I want to get to your placement props. So what do you have for us?
Yeah, I actually have a few this week. And as I mentioned earlier about RWR here, so I like Justin Haley and both Riley Herbst. I like taking them in the top 10 markets, plus 285 for Haley, plus 310 or plus 330 now at Caesars for Riley Herbst. Rick Ware Racing has been effing incredible at Daytona. They have had at least one of their cars finish on the lead lap in every Daytona race since summer of 2021. They have at least one top 10 in 4 of those 5 races. Haley and Herbst both have multiple top 10s in Xfinity. Haley 2 wins at Daytona. You're talking about Herbst last year, who finished top 10 with, I believe it was it RWR last year that he was racing for?
I don't know who Herbst was. It was still the monster car, but
yeah. But regardless, like Herbst is really good at
might be front row. I think it was front row actually.
Yeah. And this is the most important stat I found here. Since 2017, RWR's top finishing car at Daytona, all the Daytona races, their average finish is 12.5. So it's not like we're talking about a back marker that finishes these races in 20th or 25th. Like they're routinely placing a vehicle near or inside the top 10 here. So I like getting both of them to hopefully hedge a little bit, just hoping that one of the 2 cars gets inside that number.
Yeah, completely understandable. I like Justin Haley a little bit. I was down on him early in the week. Actually, this was a bet that Cody threw out on your show, Rod, that I tailed. It was Justin Haley to win Group E on Caesars. He was plus 240, along with guys like Jimmy Johnson, Austin Cindric, Harrison Burton, kind of these wild card type racers. Now that number's up to 3-1. So if you want some Justin Haley exposure, if you think he can beat guys like Jimmy Jam, Harrison Burton, Noah Gragson, he is now the lowest, your best odds to win that. So consider him there as well. I like actually Zane Smith for a top 20, and I love the top 20 market because this is a way you can get invested in. Like the payout's not great, but you're only paying the juice if you lose, right, Rod? Here, minus 105, and it actually came back to closer to even. And now I think if you won it yourself, you might have to go minus 115 for it. But Zane Smith won the Truck Series version of the Daytona 500, the Next Era Energy 250, the last 2 seasons. Smith has finished 13th in the 500 last season as well. So I think right now we could see Zane Smith bounce back. He's a guy, I think he's going to kind of hang towards the back of the race more. I think a couple big ones come through that the guy's going to be on the lead lap in the end. So that's kind of my hope here with Zane Smith. I thought leaving him at minus 105 was kind of a little bit arrogant of the books there. So I went ahead and jumped on him for a top 20. I went a unit on that. Rod, anything else for you in placement props that we haven't touched on?
No, again, placement props, it's such a tough thing to get behind because the odds are never really all that great. So yeah, I'm pretty much tapped out on the
placement. Okay. Brian, did you have one more here for us?
Yeah, this is going to make Cody really happy, but I'm laying the juice minus 134 on Corey LaJoie to top 20 over at Bet Rivers. Only one driver has a better average finish at Daytona with multiple runs than LaJoie, and that's Bubba Wallace. Corey LaJoie has finished on the lead lap in 4 consecutive Daytona 500s, which if you go back and you look, that means he's probably finished 16th or 17th at worst. He has top 10s in 2 of the last 4 Daytona 500s, and he hasn't finished outside the top 20 in the last 5 Daytona 500s. I just don't. Normally, I don't like laying negative juice at this type of race, but I think LaJoie is as consistent as they come here, and he'll wait till the end to make his move and maybe wreck. And by then, hopefully, close to half the field has already been knocked a few laps down.
Okay, I like your, kind of hedging yourself a little bit there with the ladder. I don't mind that at all. Rod, is there anything in matchups or groups you took? Not my favorite thing to bet matchups on super speedways, but at least some interesting matchup from the books. Like we kind of got some shitter fest that we can bet on, which is fun.
Well, again, we completely stay away from head to heads. Head to heads are not a good market for you to bet on super speedways. You could lose those lap 3. I mean, you could lose all of these bets on lap 3, but for head to heads, why would you want the sweat? I mean, you could be winning, and then all of a sudden, JJ Yaley jumps out of the draft and he falls all the way to the back of the race, and you got nothing going on anymore. So, but groups, as far as groups are concerned, stop me if you've heard this one. There is a Group E that has Noah Gragson, Harrison Burton, Jimmy Johnson, and Justin Haley in there. Of those 4, who do you think I'm going to take?
Jimmy Johnson in that one, right?
Plus 240 for Jimmy Johnson to win this group. But listen, the rest of these names, right? Noah Gragson, who used to be a Legacy Motor Club driver, no longer is. Harrison Burton, a Wood Brothers driver who doesn't really do much on these. And Justin Haley, who may be the biggest competition to him at plus 300. But Jimmy's got to win this group. I mean, he's going to be with the other Toyotas out there. and I think he's going to easily win Group E.
Yeah, it's an interesting group for sure. Brian, is there any matchup that you like? And obviously, like Rod said, these can kind of go either way. It is a sweat that you have to take, but there is some value to be had out there nonetheless.
Yeah, one of the matchups that I found interesting, and I always try to find plus money on
Yes,
any matchups when betting these
absolutely.
races. And this
Absolutely.
one for me was kind of surprising, and that's going to be taking Michael McDowell at plus 100 over Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I mean, we already talked about it. Yeah, Stenhouse won the 500 last year, but prior to that, the dude was a wreck fest at this race and at Daytona in general. And then McDowell too. When you go further down the odds and you look at other markets, for instance, McDowell is close to minus 160 to finish on the lead lap, while Stenhouse is only minus 129 to do this same thing. So, I mean, that's already an indication that they're expecting McDowell to finish better than Stenhouse, and yet you're getting plus money on Stenhouse to finish ahead of, or you're getting plus money on McDowell to finish ahead of Stenhouse. So the odds don't match up there, so I'm going to take the value in the matchup.
Yeah, over there at BetMGM and DK, I like that one for sure. Let's round it out here with some special markets. And I alluded to it earlier. One that I thought was incredibly cool that came out today was to lead a lap. That is insane. That is a great fucking market because Daytona is one of those tracks where we see a bunch of different leaders each and every single week. I went with a 3-pack here in this market. I went Ross Chastain plus 100, Daniel Suarez plus 125, and Harrison Burton plus 140 to lead a lap. Ross Chastain led 6 laps in last year's Daytona 500. Touched on it earlier, led a lot of laps in the Coke Zero Sugar 400 as well. I think we're going to see Ross be up there and be competitive. He looked like he might be a threat in that first duel before he got hit with that speeding penalty on pit road. So I like Ross to get back up there. And then Suarez, his teammate, this plus 125 on Mi Amigo didn't make a lot of sense for me, guys. Starting 13th here, he's led at least 1 lap in 3 straight Daytona races. That's good enough for me. And then Harrison Burton, while I don't think he's going to get the finish, that's why I love this market, because Harrison Burton has led a combined 12 laps between his 2 Daytona 500 starts. So I like him a lot. Led some laps in that Coke Zero Sugar 400 as well. And I think he's going to be motivated after Austin Cindric said, fuck you on Thursday. So I'm ready to get down there in that market. Any thoughts on that, Rod?
I love it. And again, because anybody can lead. That's the thing. There's so many different possibilities of just someone getting bumped to the front. And of course, now be careful, because sometimes you think a car is in the front and they're leading the race, but it doesn't count until you get back to the start finish line. So it doesn't matter if they're out front, they got to be out front when it counts. So I definitely love that. And in fact, I'll kind of piggyback along with yours. They got most laps led by any driver. The over under is set at 70.5. I know that the under is juiced at minus 130, but smash that under. Over the last couple of years, nobody's led more than that. I mean, 31 is what Chase Elliott led in the Coke Zero Sugar in 2022. Last year's Daytona 500, the most led laps was 42 by Brad Keselowski. We're not getting anywhere near 70 on this Daytona 500. And again, the lead changes come fast. It come furious. People are jockeying left and right. 67 by Chase Briscoe in the fall race of 2023. So again, it's not something that somebody jumps out and leads a ton of laps around. There's a lot of jockeying.
Where are you getting that number, Rod?
That's on Caesars.
Okay. Good call out there. Yeah, good call out there. I think I might have to have a late addition to the card after hearing that from you. Brian, anything else here for you in the specials market?
Yeah, I was looking at the driver to finish on a lead lap market. And again, going back to my boy, Corey LaJoie, he's one of only a handful of guys in this specific market that have plus odds who have also been doing this at a larger than 50% clip at Daytona, and especially at the 500. I already mentioned like how good he is at this track. And then the other one that I have is going to be Justin Haley, finish on the lead lap. I was going to do him and Riley Herbst, but that would definitely mean I'd be losing both of those. So I had to pick one of the 2 Rick Ware cars, and I'm going to go with Haley in that market.
Okay. And that's a cool market too. That's another cool market that, I'm glad is out there and offered. Rod, can you round us out and take us home with a numbers bet? I know this is kind of your bread and butter, my friend.
All right. So Caesars has these great winners, the car numbers. I want to get down with the even, but the even's at minus 140. So give me odd, because guess what? Odd gives me It gives me Denny Hamlin. It gives me Chase Elliott.
Kyle
It
Larson.
gives me Kyle Larson. Corey LaJoy. I know even gives me Jimmy Johnson, but yeah, odd covers a pretty good amount of good guys out there to win it. So if you're going to go plus money for a numbers bet, go plus money on the odd because I love it. I mean, the over 12.5 winner is at -170. That's too rich for my blood. So give me odd at +110.
Okay, I love it, man. I love it. Well, Brian, Rod, thank you guys so much for joining us today, man, bringing the betting public and the DFS players out there some great knowledge as we head into Daytona. Brian, tell us one more time, man, how we can best support you throughout the remainder of the season, my friend.
Yeah, you can go subscribe to the Angle of Pursuit podcast over on YouTube, our Twitter handle at FPAOP. You can follow me, Brian_Twining, over on Twitter. And then I also will have my written content for work over at bleachernation.com. I do a lot of things over there. I freelance and do all this NASCAR stuff for fun because I absolutely love it.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Rod, tell us one more time how we can best support you, everything you have going over there at the NASCAR Gambling Podcast, and all your other, we got arena football starting, we got Canadian football, USFL. Like, you're in your glory time right now, my friend.
Yeah, NFL may be over, but I definitely have not taken a step back from it at all. Follow us over on the NASCAR Gambling Podcast 5 days a week. We've got you covered from DFS, trucks, Xfinity. Cody's putting stuff in the USA Today. Like, I'm telling you right now, it's a fantastic time to be alive right now. So follow me on Twitter, also at RJ Villagomez. There's a link in the bio to everything I got going on. Like Seth said, whether it's here, whether it's the NASCAR Gambling Podcast, whether it's Sportsbook Review, I've got a Daytona 500 article up there. And then, of course, the Arena Football Podcast as well. So, yeah. Tons of stuff happening right now. You want to find it on Twitter.
Hell yeah. We appreciate everyone tuning in. D-Pat, Lana, Alan, Cody over there, Stan. Thank you guys so much. If you guys enjoyed this type of content, let us know in the comments. Let us know how we can do better and continue to bring you more and better content along the way. Until next time, you guys know what to do. Keep it in between. Enjoy the Daytona 500, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank y'all so much. See ya.